We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:05. Can I please have everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do we have roll recorded, Miss Speedbird? All right. Number two. I gotta start early. Number two, finance. We actually have Mr. Ken Phillips from RBC Capital Markets. Mike invited him out so he can give us some of the financing options for Paxinosa Elementary School and future projects.
Just as a precursor to the board, I asked Ken to come out and for everybody's reminder, if you will, we started this, we said we had $11 million for the Paxinosa project, left over from all the borrowed money. The scope has expanded, because we know it, we talked about adding some things, we're looking at, an estimate of $20 million, we want to put this one committed at. But we also talked, and Mr. Phillips was here a couple of meetings ago, we talked about the time to borrow. We have other buildings in the capital improvement plan that we obviously are going to start looking at and start addressing. So I asked Ken to come back just to bring everybody back up to speed with some ballpark examples, if you will, about the borrowing, when to do it, how to do it, and specifically with moving forward with Paxinosa renovations, we're going to need to borrow in more of an immediate future to cover if we approve a $16 million, $17, $18 million contract with Paxinosa. So what I asked Ken to do was give us a little picture where we're at now with our debt and just samples of if we borrow another $10 million for the tax job, and then moving forward years down the road, if we look at our capital improvement plan, that draft, we may need to borrow, if we're going to address all the schools, we may need to borrow $50, $60, $80 million more in a time when our debt starts decreasing and we can keep it at a level base. So with that, I just wanted to bring Ken here and bring you guys up to speed so we're all on the same page that even with the PAC project, if we approve more than what's in the left over the bond money, we're going to need to borrow, and Ken can give us some samples of what that's going to look like.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. It's always a pleasure to be here. Does everyone have the handout?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
No, because our superintendent's
That's
not.
all right. No worries. No worries. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. And listening to the conversations at the last meeting, and knowing that following me tonight, you're going to be interviewing some architects, which I applaud you for doing that and getting the process going. It's very important, and what I want you to use and utilize the information coming around tonight is a tool. Is a tool for you that when the architects start talking about Paxinosa, when they start talking about other projects, that you have some framework, because under Act 1, things are different. Under Act 1, borrowing money is not as easy as it was years ago. When this board made a decision, and the 500 other school boards across the state, whenever you needed money, you went out and borrowed money because you had the taxing power to do it, you had the borrowing capacity to do it. Act 1's a little different, okay, because you have an index that you need to live within. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the money needed for Paxinosa, but also just a hypothetical, okay, a larger amount of money down the road, what you need to do now so we get ready for it. Okay? So, very first page, this is just a snapshot. You've seen this before. This is the gross debt that we have outstanding. So you can see from 2002 through the 2014 issues. We've done a very good job. As you know, we've saved millions and millions and millions of dollars here the last couple of years in terms of debt service. Next page is the net debt service, meaning net after reimbursements. So based on the reimbursements that you're getting or that you're scheduled to get once PlanCon, money start flowing, you can see in the far right-hand side, your debt runs between $12 and $12.5 million, about 12.1-ish. You have 2 years where it jumps up a little bit and then you're back down. That becomes important as we take a look at the future. How are we gonna structure another large borrowing, like we did for the high school, and so on? How are we gonna pay for this? So this right-hand column, you're gonna see on some other studies coming forward. The next 2 pages, and I'm not gonna bother reading this, but it was very timely. I did an article for the PSBA Journal in February, I think it was, of this year, with respect to financing capital projects under Act 1. So I'll let you read that at your discretion, but at the bottom of the very first page, which is page 3 of your document, are some bullet points. And if you're looking for any type of meaningful project, the bullet points there pretty much talk about what you need to understand. Is first of all, fully understand what we just looked at. You have existing debt, we just looked at it, we know when the maturity dates are, we know when the debt starts to roll off and so on. Second bullet point is you need to identify how much cash you raise from your maximum index rate and the maximum index rate plus exceptions. That is crucial to know those 2 numbers. Because that's how you have to live. I mean, you need to live within that. You need to not only do your operational budget, general fund budget, but you need to then raise money potentially for projects. So we need to know what those numbers are. You need to look at a 5-year budget model. What does your general fund operating need in the next 5 years? And if you say your general fund operating needs all of your index, guess what? We got some issues if you're going to borrow some money. You can always go to referendum. You can always go to referendum. Chances of it passing are probably 28. Okay, 28. So those are some of the bullet points. Goes on to the next page, but again, you can read that at your pleasure. Let's then go to the next page, which is a millage study, an illustration for just $10 million. Now, why $10 million? Well, you can look in the right-hand column, or I'm sorry, up toward the right-hand portion of the page. This is anticipating needing $10 million for Paxinosa, okay, and $11 million of utilizing some of your own money. Now, that's not saying Paxinosa is going to cost $21 million. That's what you're enlisting your architects for. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20, it's some number. So when Mike and I were talking, okay, we said, well, we need $10 million and we're going to utilize some of our own cash. So let's just look at a $10 million study. Let's just get a benchmark for what $10 million cost us. So Paxinosa being the first project, and if you're going to pursue, and I think I mentioned this when we were doing the resolutions for the 2008 refunding, which are currently on the books. If we're going to pursue any new projects, we're going to do a financing this year. Get it done before 12/31. Why? The IRS allows you $10 million a year, okay, of debt that's called bank qualified debt. What's that mean? It means banks can buy it and they're normally lower in interest rate, get better call features on it and so on. So anticipating that you need money for Paxinosa now, we're going to utilize, which we haven't done yet in 2015, utilize the $10 million exception, get money, and that frees up the next couple of years to maybe do some of the refundings, just like we did the last 3-4 years when we did refundings every year, and we saved all the money we did. So planning becomes very important. So to the extent you're going to go forth with a project, whether it's Paxinosa or any other project you're talking about, we're probably going to get some money this year, okay? And that gives us some flexibility the next couple of years. So now let's look at this. It's a spreadsheet. The very first column is the number we just looked at on the net debt service, $12,123,000. You see it bumps up a little bit, 22 and 23 to 12.5, and then it drops off precipitously to 9 and to 2. So you're virtually out of debt in 28. Okay? Now, the next column then is, how would we structure this? Well, we structure it just like if you recall we were talking about when we were looking at the energy projects. It's a wraparound structure, meaning that we're taking your existing debt into consideration when we're focusing on the new debt. So we're going to take the $10 million, we're going to structure it around your existing debt, so really it's minimal impact out through 2024. Then the big impact comes when your old debt goes away. So from a millage standpoint, it's the best possible lowest millage you can do. And with your debt structure the way it is, this structure is very meaningful in terms of your long-term goals. Okay? Now, what happens? Well, we're using the value of a mill of 1.6 million, which is right in the middle. Okay? We're keeping that constant. More than likely that's going to go higher, but let's just be on the conservative side. We're going to keep that constant. We then go to a green column. How do you need to pay for this? Okay? We need to go up 0.1 mils for the next 4 years in order for you to pay for this. So out of your index, now what does your index equate to in mils? The answer is 1.5 mils. If you went up your max index today, okay, it generates about 1.5 mils. So you need a very small portion of that to fund $10 million. And then that fully funds what you need to fund for this particular illustration. Okay? Your max index plus, meaning the exceptions, is going to generate obviously more than a mil and a half. The far right-hand column is sort of just a balancing column. We need, for example, if we go up 0.1 mils in 2017, we need another $265,000 bucks. So we're going to take that from maybe the 11 million or a general fund or whatever. But then if you keep on going up that, you're going to get that money back. So that's sort of a balancing column. Okay, I'm not worried too much about that right now. That sort of evens itself out with respect to where we need to get to in terms of mils. All right. So this illustration, and look at the bottom, footnote 2. We're assuming current rates plus 50 basis points as a contingency, realizing that we think we're going to get something done this year. So we have a little cushion built in. It should be a little better. All right, we're not assuming any planning on reimbursement. You may get reimbursement, but we're not planning on any. We're showing it again on a conservative level as 100%. Any questions on this page? Because this sort of sets the tone for the next page that we're going to look at.
When we say any questions on this page, does everybody understand what we just heard on this page?
Okay.
All right?
So, if we go out and borrow $10 million, and if you don't put 0.4 mils in place over the next 4 years, then I'm going to come back to you and take my shoe off and pound it on the table and say, why not? Because you need to fund this money. Now you may say, you know what? We can't afford 0.1 this year, but next year we're doing 0.2. It doesn't matter. At the end of the 4 years, you can come up with the 0.4. You may do it all in 1 year. All right? Now, doubtful, but again, this just gives you some snapshot with respect to what you need to do. This is just 10 million. Now, a planning tool. Let's go to the next page. Planning tool is, this page generates $60 million of projects. Let me rephrase that, $60 million of the money. Okay, it does not count your 11 million. So really you have 70 million, because the first page was 10 million bonding, 11 million packs of, cash, however much that is. We do a 2015 issue, because Paxos is on the table. We then, based on hypothetical future projects, and the timing is going to be whatever you tell us the timing is going to be. But when Mike and I talked about it, we said a 2020 issue, a 21 and 22. Meaning that you're going to start these other projects sometime in fiscal year 1920. Now, if that moves to 1819, fine, moves to 1819. Moves something shorter, fine, moves something shorter, but we need to start funding. Okay? So what this page shows is that, going to the green column, let's just go right there. If you wanted to embark on a project like this, where you don't necessarily need to identify the projects right now, but when you talk to these architects in the next 3 hours, and they're looking at Paxinosa and maybe other things, whatever you're doing, you know that you need money, and it's something more than 10 million. And so for this illustration, we're saying 60 million. If you committed to going up roughly 0.16 mils a year, as the green column shows, beginning in 16, 17, and you do that for the next 8 years to get to $1.25 million roughly, you would fully fund $60 million based on the assumption of footnotes 2 to 5. Now, the assumption of footnotes 2 to 5 are current rates plus 0.75%. Can I guarantee rates are not gonna go up? No, we can't guarantee that. But at least it gives you an illustration. And this is all about Act 1 financing. This is all about setting yourself up for, if you say we need 60 million 2 years from now, I'm gonna tell you you're too late. Unless you're willing to go up 0.5 of, mil, and basically operation suffers and things of that nature. This is how you have to conceptually think under Act 1, how to fund large amounts of money. You can't just make a snapshot decision like we used to, okay? I'm not saying that was bad, believe me, I'm not a fan of Act 1. But under the old system, if I came in here, you could go up $1.25 million next year if you wanted to. And fund 60 million, but you can't do that anymore. So we know that your max index equals $1.5 million. But we also know that you have other operational needs that you need to fund. So how do I balance debt and operational needs within my index or index plus? So in your mind, conceptually, if you buy into the fact that we need $60 million, and maybe that number is 90, maybe it's 40. If we need money of that nature, can this board, with the discipline, start to put in a financing plan to say, okay, next year we're going up 0.16, and the year after that we're going up 0.16, okay? If you never use it, fine, the mills will get used somewhere else in the budget. But if you don't do it, the compounding effects is just significant, all right? This is a planning tool. It's something for you to chew on if you embark on something larger than just $10 million. Can you afford 0.1? Yeah. 0.1 for the next 4 years, you guys can afford. Can you afford 0.16 for the next 8 years? Maybe so. Maybe so. And that gets you roughly $60 million. All right? So we thought it was prudent to have this conversation first before you start listening architects tell you that we have a $90 million funding grant for you. And where's the money gonna come from? So, questions on this?
And going back to something you said, you laid it out 2015 and 2020. I think based on some of our discussions here, we talked about that projects would happen a little bit closer and everything. So, and you're right, 60, it could be 70, it could be 80 million. But the thought was because of when we talked about Chester, we talked about Palmer, and possibly even Tracy, that projects would happen a lot closer, therefore needing money sooner. The second comment you made, I'll go back putting the two pieces together, you said it's easier to do 10 million a year. Just stay under that limit. So does it end up making sense that next year in 2016 and 2017, we ought to look at 10 million each of those years?
Based on your timing, Bob, possibly, yes.
Because that builds the cash up slowly, maybe getting a better rate, because we may not have to spend this money until over the next 2 years, so we're still gonna have it in the bank earning.
What I was trying to do was to balance the potential refunding opportunities.
Okay.
That's why we had a little gap. But if you said the project timeline was we're doing Paxos now, and then on 18, we're doing Chester, okay? And then 19 is Tracy. Whatever. This is, again, just an illustration of like a balance sheet, a snapshot. You tell us what the timing's gonna be, because then we're gonna come back with something different, and guess what? This 0.16 made it go maybe 0.26. Okay? Whatever it's gonna be, it's gonna be. So this is just giving you an illustration on this timeline, but we can accelerate it very easily based on your needs. Okay? Realizing that to the extent we push the 60 million in a time period of 15 to 21 instead of 15 to 22 or 15 to 20 or whatever it's going to be, then this green column is going to be pushed up as well.
Or, everything you gave us examples on here is basically 10 years.
Well, that's because, quite honestly, it's the cheapest way to go. Bob, if you go out longer, your cost is not going to change. The brevity of your debt allows for this type of structure. Okay? It is the lowest cost financing for you. If you stretch this debt out over a longer period of time, like level debt, it's not gonna change these numbers. It's probably going to actually expedite the need for more mills in place.
Okay, that's neat.
So this is the best structure. Timing is entirely up to you. If you say, we're gonna embark on Paxinosa now, 2 years later, we have Justin, then we got Tracy, then we got high school, which is a whole nother project way down the road, okay? This is just to give you some idea that you can't call us tomorrow and say we're borrowing $60 million. Because I'm gonna say, fine, guess what? You go up your max index next year, $1.5 million, that's all going to debt. Forget about operations, you don't need to run the school, so, but that's pretty much what it comes down to. That's why we wanted to have this discussion now, before you really start to get into the meat and the potatoes over here. All right.
Questions?
Okay, we will be back, we'll be obviously in touch with Mr. Reinhardt, Mr. Simonetta. Anticipate that as long as you're proceeding with the project, Paxinosa or whatever, we need to get 10 million done this year. Okay, so we'll be back at a meeting to do, a Crowner's resolution. All right,
We'll see you.
Thank you.
whatever,
Thank you.
just-
Thanks, man.
just let us know, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Josh, you're up. Absolutely.
Okay, MKSD is outside, I will invite them in just a minute.
Hold on 1 second, sorry, I just have to figure this out. I have to change. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I just don't want to run out of time.
Good work, Mike.
Hi, buddy.
Hello.
How are you?
Thanks, how are you?
Good, thanks. We're the MKSD group.
Welcome.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the dinner. I'm very lucky because my parents have an Italian restaurant not that far from here, so I use them when I can.
I don't know how to
Let
set
me
the
make a
timer.
comment that some people have raised the question of whether or not this was a waffle pizza. I just want everyone to know that the timing was perfect for dinner. I thought the crust was a little soft.
Uh-oh.
I had the thin and crispy, so it's different.
But more seriously, I've given the opinion that this is the minimus of this value. We looked at it as a business courtesy. However, if you come again and you add a topping like crab or lobster, it could be a recordable event.
They'll take it over. Okay, well, we won't go there then.
We're safe with the toppings that you gave us.
All right.
And that will not influence anybody's vote.
I don't want you to get hungry when we start our presentation, so that's important.
I want to thank you for coming out. As I'm sure you're aware, we're going to, you have 25 minutes to do your presentation. We have some questions we will then ask. We have 20 minutes set aside for questions. So the floor is yours.
Very good, thank you very much.
Hold on, sorry. Thanks. 25 hours would be too long.
Can I get those 10 seconds back?
Yeah, sorry, give me a second, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll start.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, was that anyone?
I'm Sylvia Hoffman. I'm the president of MKSD Architects. and I'm really grateful that all of you
Thank
invited me here tonight to talk about my firm. Just a short personal story before we start. My mom actually went to Easton Middle School when she was a young girl. She moved here from Sicily, as many people from Easton did. She learned to speak English, she learned to write, she learned to read. Unfortunately, she did not graduate. She's a business owner today. I'm very proud of that, so it's kind of a neat thing for me to come back and potentially work on this school for her. So I grew up in the West Ward on 11th and Washington with my grandmother. So this is kind of like in my old neighborhood, just
I know, I had to
so
go.
this is kind of an exciting project for me. So I'd like to start off, first of all, mission statement's very critical. Always focusing on what's the intent of the school district, what's their goal for the students, and how do we make sure that we comply with that as architects. You're hiring us to do the best job that we can. We always go back to this when we keep that in our mind about how we want to make decisions. So it's very important for us to have that mission statement always at the forefront of our mind. Next slide, please. So who are we and what can we do for you? So this is part of my firm, some of the people in my office. This is where we all start out, right? As young kids, children, babies, kind of being inspired, especially when we head to elementary school. You know, we try to keep some of those very important qualities that we learn in elementary school with us for our lives, whether it's being creative, whether it's working as teams, collaborating, communicating. All those skills are brought through our whole lifetime, really. Next slide. So who are we? What can we bring? Well, this is what we bring. 30 years of educational design experience on this team. 21 years working together. I know I look young, it's oil of Olay, but I've worked with this gentleman next to me for 21 years, the gentleman right behind him for 21 years, and with Jess for 10. So we are a long-term team that has collaborated on a lot of projects together. We've done 7 projects locally exactly like this. When I say exactly, I mean there are existing school buildings that we've renovated while occupied under a tight budget, a tight time constraint, and in phases. So we've done this before successfully. All those were learning process. This will be the one that's close to perfect as it's going to get. We're also WBE, which I'm very proud of. Women-owned business. We reflect the diversity of our clients. We reflect the diversity of the community. That's important to us. I think something that's important to everyone. We're a community-based firm, and no project is too small for us. None is too big. We've done every size. They're all important. Next slide, please. So who's my team? I'm backed up by a lot of people. It's not just me. First of all, on my team alone, I have 9 people from my office. They all have specialties, whether it's roofing, whether it's building information technology, whether it's interior design, full-time construction administrator. And myself, I'll be the partner in charge. So with me tonight, I brought the most important people on my team. I want to bring everyone. I want to crowd the room out. I have John Young with me. He's going to be the project manager. Jess Klosik, she's a registered architect. She's going to be the project architect. PDE specialist, phasing specialist. Kevin Buxton is from HB Engineers. He's a founding partner of HB Engineers. He'll be supplying all of the engineering services to us. My other team members who are not here play a little small role, but still important. Barry Isaac for civil engineering, JMS for acoustics, and Corsi Associates for food service design for the renovation of the cafeteria and kitchen portion of the project. We're a deep team. We have the skill and experience that it takes to accomplish this project for you. Next slide, please. So, the school of yesterday, next. Definitely not the Paxinosa of the 21st century. All those kids with their hands behind their back, looking very serious, all listening very attentively. It's not what it's about today. Today it's about engagement, it's about teamwork, it's about collaboration, it's about keeping kids excited about the learning process. And we feel that we've learned how to design environments that really facilitate that. Next slide. So the photos that I'm going to show you next are all projects that are renovations that we've completed locally for K-12 schools. What are we talking about when we design a good school? Today, it means skill development for the 21st century learner, being able to solve problems, collaboration, fostering curiosity, integrating technology seamlessly. This is Catasauqua Middle School. Next slide, please. Instructional flexibility. Every space needs to do more than one thing. We need to make the dollars work really hard. Try to make spaces that can be converted for a variety of teaching styles that are informal but also formal, and always think about how things change expand into the future. This is Weisenberg Elementary School. Next slide, please. Technological adaptability. Technology needs to be seamless. For my kids it is. They do stuff that I don't even know how to do, right? That's natural to them. So whatever we give them, it needs to be something that's integrated very well into their environment. And of course, we need the infrastructure that's going to support that too. Electrical, mechanical, all those things. Next slide. Community accessibility. So important for our school district, especially Pax knows it. It's a community school. It's in a neighborhood. You know, we know that feeling and we want to make it feel part of that community. That means that spaces like the gymnasium, spaces like the auditorium, they need to be accessible to the public, but also secure and divided from the rest of the building when needed. This is Northwestern Elementary School. Next slide. Inviting yet secure. I'm sure 10 or 15 years ago, if you would have started talking about security in schools, people would have thought, you know, why do we need that? We have a safe society, things won't happen. They do happen. I think everyone knows that. We're in Pax Peninsula last spring. There's concerns. We need to be able to lock down the building quickly. We need to be able to secure the main entrances. We need to be able to have the main offices close to spaces where people are coming in and out so you can observe and see. Very important, but at the same time, you don't want kids to feel like they're going to a prison or some kind of locked down place when they get to school. They want to feel welcome. They want to feel as if they belong there. They want to feel comfortable. So we have to strategize to make those two things work seamlessly. Next slide. Healthy environment. Again, something that wasn't touched on 10, 15 years ago. When we select materials, whether it's carpet, whether it's paint, all of those things, we make decisions, and Jess is my environmental specialist here, we make decisions that all those materials are very carefully selected to make sure that they're not compromising the health of the students, the faculty, anyone in the building. This is Northampton High School. Next slide. Low maintenance. Costs money to maintain things. Let's make good decisions up front. We want to vet different materials. If we're going to pay more for them, there has to be a reason for it. Is it going to last into the future? We have to maintain it less. Is it appropriate for the space? Are there ways that we can get away with spending less but not increasing maintenance costs? So we have to make sure that we make good decisions on both ends. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to hand over this portion of the presentation to Jess. She worked very hard on the site planning and the floor plans of the building, and I hope that you can see kind of the direction that we're going. And
Thank you, Sylvia.
you're welcome.
Sorry, one sec.
So the existing site, as you know, part of the neighborhood, there's a couple of challenges and goals with the site and things we want to kind of address as part of the project. Obviously, you have the existing modular building that is going to be demolished at the end of the project. The existing playground area here adjacent to the housing, the residential area, and then what I've kind of identified up here in the red could be used as staging during construction and then possibly turned over to a parking lot in the end. The other thing we wanted to identify was a location for the chiller for the mechanical equipment and how that could be incorporated into the site. Next slide, please. So we came up with two different options, pros and cons for each of them. The first one would be to use that existing playground area for an ADA space parking lot, moving the existing playground up into the area that was the modular classroom portion and keeping that small existing parking lot there. Pluses to this is that you're separating the residential area from the playground, kind of limiting the noise that's being transferred. The second option moves the parking up adjacent to the stadium, acts as overflow parking for your stadium, also keeps the playground in the area that it is currently, provides less work to do. It acts as a buffer between the vehicular traffic up off of 12th Street there, and really can create this being more of a pedestrian area from the back of the building. Next slide, please.
Oops.
So on the lower level, I apologize, this isn't showing up. At the lower level, you have a couple main goals. The first of which is to kind of reorganize the kindergartens to be able to combine them into one location. You don't have that stray kindergarten up off of the west corridor there. We kind of came up with an idea, since we're going to be gutting basically the ceilings, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, it would be a good time to go in and do a little bit more architectural work by moving that corridor wall from the upper classrooms in 2 feet, just takes it from a 10-foot corridor down to an 8-foot corridor, and resizing all of these classrooms to meet PDE standards of 1,000 square feet. Provides toilet room in each. There's some plumbing work associated, obviously, with adding some toilet rooms up to the top. This is the perfect time to do it while you have everything gutted. And it also gains a small group instruction room. The other item that would be part of the basement area, or the lower level area, would be to upgrade the acoustics and finishes in that music room that's down there. Next slide, please. On the first floor, you're basically looking at four major goals. First of which, obviously, is this east wing, renovating the 4 classrooms that are in that wing into 5. Expanding the main office area into the existing locker area and providing a more secure vestibule for incoming visitors. Creating some classroom space out of existing temporary office space, and then tackling the cafeteria. Next slide, please. There's actually plenty of room in the existing cafeteria area where the tables and chairs are to provide 228 seats, which is ample for 4 lunches of 5 classes per grade. And expanding the kitchen, by adding a serving line into the existing cafeteria footprint, and adding freezer and refrigerator space into the existing faculty dining and lounge space. This maintains your existing delivery access, trash removal access, so you're not changing any of those functions of the cafeteria. Next slide, please. On the second floor, again, that east wing of the classroom space, one of the biggest goals there, again, is to modify that from 4 classrooms into 5 equal space classrooms. Again, removing some of the temporary offices that are up in that west corridor and creating small group instruction. And then redoing some of the locker areas into offices and storage space off the corridor. We also propose to kind of provide an architectural separation between your classroom, 3rd grade classroom, and the music, and the art room, the art room up on that space. Next slide, please. So with that having been said, more than 50% of the budget is MEP related, and we are very conscious of that. We brought Kevin Buxton from HB to kind of explain your existing and what he's proposing for your MEP upgrades.
So, we know the mechanical systems are exceeding their life expectancy. They're approximately 40 years of age. The last construction project was done around 1976, according to the drawings. You have a lot of multi-zone air handling units, which I won't get into too much detail what that means, but they're good for control for different zones, but they are very energy inefficient. Part of the building is cooled, and a lot of the building is not cooled. So it's interesting as you look at those original drawings back in 1976, there actually was an alternate bid to cool the entire school, which unfortunately for your sake now, you're looking at paying the cost of doing that now. We understand that you put in a new high-efficiency heating system a couple years ago, and kudos to you, a great system that you put in there. And again, many of the areas in the building are just heating only. We did do a pretty extensive walk through the building. We dove into looking at the existing drawings to try to get a better understanding of what's there. Next slide, please. In looking through the building and the drawings, we found that there's about 15 air systems. And those 15 air systems are just scattered throughout the building. A lot of times the units will be up on the roof or in the central mechanical room. But the option for the design back in 1976 was to just scatter these air handlers all over the building. So we generated a spreadsheet here to try to determine where these units are, what they serve. Go to the next slide, please. So what we did is we took the floor plan and started to plop all these air handlers, and you can start to see they are scattered throughout the building. The lower level here, 4 or 5 air handling units. And what's important to note is some of these mechanical rooms where these air handlers are serving, there's 1 air handling unit. Some of them there's 2. And why it's important to note that is because phasing becomes a critical issue. With this being a big portion of the project, we need to carefully phase not only how it works moving your students around, but also how the mechanical systems will be affected. So areas where you have one unit in a mechanical room, not the end of the world. We will need to rip that mechanical room apart in order to get new equipment, new piping in there. So when we go to a mechanical room that has more than one unit, it gets a lot trickier, because those 2 or 3 units in one room will spread out, ductwork will reach out to many different places, and phasing becomes very, very difficult. Next slide, please. First floor, not too many, we just have 2 mechanical rooms, but then you'll see on the second floor, next slide, please. There's quite a few of them, and 2 of them in particular in the front of the building have 2 mechanical rooms, 2 air handlers per mechanical room. Again, very tricky with the phasing. Next slide, please. On the plumbing side, we notice there's a 6-inch water service to the building, which is great, knowing you want to sprinkle the whole building. 4-inch domestic water, 5-inch fire service. We know that portions of the building are sprinklered, the basement storage areas and the stage. Next slide, please. Electrical systems, you're in great shape. You've got an existing 2,000 amp, 480 volt service. Should be plenty of power to air condition the whole school. You have existing indoor 55 kW generator, and you have the existing simplex fire alarm system. So that was kind of our assessment, walking through quickly, looking at the drawings, trying to get a better understanding of what the building consists of. Next slide, please. So how do we accomplish your goals and upgrade these systems? Several different options. First of all, we need to replace all these air handlers that we talked about scattered all over. We need to put in some type of chiller that's going to cool the building. Right now you have a 40-year-old 130-ton chiller. We're estimating approximately 300 to 350 tons is what you're going to need. Tons is just an air conditioning term for those that don't know that. So we need to put an energy-efficient chiller in. We need to replace all these air handlers. As we replace the air handlers, we're going to enhance the ventilation air by code. So we're going to enhance the indoor air quality to the building. And then to get all these new systems operating properly and efficiently and together, we're going to install a new automatic temperature or building management control system so we can, again, offer an energy efficiency plan. Next slide, please. We're also going to, again, provide automatic fire suppression throughout the rest of the building. We want to take advantage of upgrading all the lighting, LED fixtures, high efficiency fixtures. And then we also need all the classrooms that get renovated, we need to redo the MEP systems in there as well. Next slide, please. So again, new chiller. Where do we put that chiller? Could put it on the roof. Again, 350 tons worth of chiller it's a tractor trailer. It's a big piece of equipment. So where do we put it? Site placement's critical. We think we came up with a decent location, but we'll need to screen it for security and noise issues. You're in a neighborhood. We got to make sure this thing is quiet and not creating problems. And we also need to have the chiller. We got to get piping in and out of the building to this chiller. Next slide, please. So we replace all these air handling units. There's 15 air handling units to replace. And if we're going to reuse the existing mechanical spaces, we're now going to be putting in bigger units because now we want to add cooling. Right now, most of these units are just heating only. So the heating coil, now we have to add a cooling coil. So the units are going to get bigger. So there's the potential that we may need to use some semi-custom air handling units. They're not an off-the-shelf unit. They're semi-custom, so we can kind of configure them to the room configuration that exists. So additional space might be required, though. We might not have enough space to do everything. So we might need to take over some storage room space or even potentially locate some of the units up on the roof. And by creating new spaces in the storage room or up on the roof, that'll help us with phasing, too, as we try to renovate areas that are occupied. Next slide, please. One of the possible systems that we looked at is converting the multi-zone units, replacing those units, and going with an energy efficient variable air volume system. The multi-zone system it's very accommodating for this changeover to VAV because you have different branches of ducts going to each of the zones. So it's a good option. We have to evaluate the ductwork. Is the installation on the ductwork proper with the vapor barrier? Because again, when they did this, they weren't thinking cooling, they were only doing heating, so we've got to worry about that. How is the ductwork? Is it just a cleaning acceptable, or does it need to be sealed up? So, but the goal would try to be, under this option, we'd try to reuse a lot of the downstream ductwork. Next slide, please. And then we also look at an optional system. Instead of putting the large air handlers in and running the large ductwork to each of the zones of the classrooms, we looked at what's called the chilled beam system. This requires less airflow, but now a lot of the heating and cooling is done right in the classroom or right in the space. So instead of running that big ductwork to the classrooms, we're now running what we call a 4-pipe system. We're running piping throughout the building instead of the ductwork. It may help though, as you know, the problems we talk about as far as bigger air handling units and cramming all this equipment in the rooms. So overall, this option could offer less space requirements. Next slide, please. Generator, probably looking at an outdoor generator if you want to add more emergency power to the building. You might want to start thinking about putting coolers and freezers on emergency power, the heating system. So that generator is going to get bigger. So more than likely, better location than in the building would be to put it outside the building. So we have those same siting issues we talked about with the chiller that we need to find a home for it. With that being said, we have a lot of phasing issues to talk about, and John's going to run through some of them.
Thank you, Kevin. Let you get a breath here for a second. Kevin just gave you a ton of HVAC equipment information. And that ton question will come back maybe and ask you that later when you get a ton of AC is. I would bet that this school utilized a ton of AC back in the day before air conditioning was involved. Literally in your auditorium space. So that's pretty cool. I personally have admired this school for many years. I moved east in 1980 and lived here for 30 years in the area, and I've often admired this school, so I commend you for maintaining, restoring, and renovating. Phasing of the project. To break this down into 5 phases, if you would just flip through the 3, and then I want to come back, go to the first, go to the last, okay, and then back to the lower level. You see the color coding that we have breaking up each of those 5 phases. I'm going to give you the broad brush overview. Phase 1 is essentially to clear out the corridors, do the work early in the summer. That makes the next way so the project can proceed during the intermediate phases 2, 3, and 4. Essentially, the corridors would stay open. Do that in the summer, open them up, they stay open through the duration of the project. Project overall, 18 months from the time of contracts to close out. First 4 months in the contracts essentially will be for ordering materials, shop drawing review, getting that up front. To start off though with construction the first summer of 2016. That's what we clear the runway, so to speak. Phase 2, 3, and 4, doing the interior building while you're occupied. It's like, how the heck do you do that? It could be really tough, and not even this stuff. We're not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be difficult, but it's having been there, done that we know the issues that we run up against, and help make this project as smooth and seamless as possible. You have a couple of things going for you on this project. The modular building, 2 stories, it's vacant. We can use that as a swing space. Rarely do we get that in a project. Second thing is, as Kevin said, the challenges with the 15 air handler units. The fact that there are 15 also allows the building kind of to be separated while we take down some units and renovate an area. It makes it simpler than if we had one central plant that we had to take down and get back up in very short order and then redistribute. So those are the benefits. Again, phase 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to oversimplify this, and Reef's going to say, it's not that simple overall, but phase 2, 3, and 4 essentially are going to be a hopscotch. We clear out an area. First area would be green, and if you would go up to the first floor, green areas, clear out that, and if you notice the wing lower left, if you go up to the upper level, we're going to do all that in phase 2. So that's kind of done together. We then, once those are complete, we actually remove the purple group, which is phase 4, into the swing space, and keep moving on with the project in the phases. Again, overall about 18 months, 14 months of construction. I will tell you that that timeline is very aggressive. And we would work at doing engineering essentially to building float recommended in that time because stuff does happen. It always happens. There Some of the things that, examples have been there, we've experienced this, is we take those ceilings and the corridors, petitions of those corridor walls may not go to the underside of the deck. And those are issues that we have to bring to resolve, and that's often in the special school buildings. Good thing is, we're gonna sprinkle it, we don't need ratings, but we do need smoke separation in those corridors. So overall, that's the appraisal in a broad brush. Glad to entertain any questions that you have at the end of our presentation.
Can I have a 2-minute wrap up, or are we done? So the big question is always, why hire this firm, right? That's how we wrap it up. For good reasons. You have a lot of other firms that you're considering, or you consider that sure are very qualified, but for us, what do we bring to this? In my office, a culture of integrity and trust, honesty. Work from the heart, work with passion every day when you tackle the tasks that your clients have given you. Be responsible with the money that you spend. When you spend it, pretend that it's your own, because you're going to be really careful on how you spend it. And focus on creating this project as a legacy for this board. You know, this is thankless work for you guys sometimes. I know it's hard. I've been there. I understand, because I worked with boards for a long time. I know. But I'm going to help you make those good decisions. Next slide. So this is what we bring. This team, I'm not going to rehash it. We're deep. We've worked together for a long time. We didn't just start this company this year or last year. We've been around, and we know what it takes to get these projects done. Next slide. Educational facilities experience, hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. Not just new buildings, but renovations just like this one. Next. Specific project experience, 7 local projects just like this one, and school districts that you're all familiar with. And I'd be glad to take you to any of those if you want to walk through them to get familiar with them. I can do that for you. Hacks and O's is going to be our best one, because we've done so many of them already, it just keeps improving. Next slide. Project delivery, we're masters of them. We're the leaders in Lehigh Valley for creating projects in Revit and actually having them built, which includes a campus for NCC Community College in Monroe. $72 million project. It's done with Dewey, it's completed, and it's a great project. Next slide. Collaboration with Dewey. $200 million in the last 10 years of projects with Dewey. At Northampton Community College, as well as other local school districts, including the new campus at Monroe. So we know what it's like to collaborate and work with them. Next slide. What is this really about? At the end of the day, it's about your kids in this district. When we make those decisions, every day it's focusing on your kids. Next. And these kids. Next. And these kids. That's what it's really about. Putting our heart out there, putting our experience, putting our integrity, our passion, our expertise to achieve the goals for the children of this district. That's all we got. Thank you so much. Questions, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We have some.
Yes.
All right, I don't know if we get a pen right. We have 5 questions that we already put together, so
Great.
I don't know if you want to write them down or somebody.
Here's a pen here.
Now, these are questions that came from the committee and the board. Question 1, 3-parter. What multi-use and space efficiencies are incorporated into your concept plan?
Multi-use spaces. This-
Multi-use and space efficiencies are incorporated into your concept plan.
Well, I think, first of all, multi-use spaces to me means anything that's an assembly type space. Whether that's a gymnasium, this is an existing building, so it's a little different from new construction. Assembly spaces could be cafeteria space, it could be auditorium space. I know that those are part of your program, and those are multi-use spaces. They can be used for multi-function. So as we renovate them, we could put AV systems in there that can accommodate more than one function. We can make sure furniture can be arranged in multiple ways so that it can get you the best bang for your buck. So those are 2 that, some that I would say.
We've also been able to talk about a couple extra small group instruction, not to oversize certain classrooms. We found some niches that we can add some of that maybe a group of 5 classroom grade level of the same can share on a daily basis for small groups, for specialists to come in, whatever it be. So we tucked them, we've kind of identified some spaces on our plans and things like that.
Second part of that question, how does your concept plan accommodate community and after-hours use of the facility?
I think getting back to what we were mentioning in safety and security when we hit those items, it's very important for us when we get into the design further to make sure that we can isolate, for example, the auditorium, isolate the gym space. Are there other ways to access into the building that maybe are not there anymore, whether it's closing security doors, or allowing access from the outside? How do we tackle those? But a lot of that depends on how you want to use the space and what you want to do. So I think that that's something that we would look further, investigate with the administrators and the faculty.
And final part of that, how does your concept design enhance and promote building security and safety?
I think that we accomplished that. I know that you have already installed a lockdown vestibule partially in the entranceway, and right now the vestibule is located right adjacent to the offices that are there. But what we've actually done is reroute the entrance into the office, and Jess can speak further to this too because she really got into details. Those two office banks are to the left and the right of that security vestibule. So you're forced to go into a lockdown man area and into the office directly and then back out if they allow you to go into the building. So it's a very important part of the project. I know Jessica.
It's also incorporated the security office into the vestibule area, so he or she is hands-on right there where anybody would be coming into the building. The main office separation was kind of done so that the community area and the counseling area is on one side, and the main office, the principal, assistant principal is on the other, with the assistant principal very accessible, knowing that they handle more of the behavioral, the parents coming in and out. So they're more accessible to the main office area just right up front. So we've kind of created a separation there as well, that there's multiple points, kind of a checkpoint, so to speak, but also that they are accessible to the community.
That was all question one, by the way.
Okay.
Question two. How will you work with our project management team to make sure that cost control, schedule, and quality are maintained?
Oh,
So, I'll take that?
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I have a tendency to take over.
The delivery of the documents will be in 3 or 4 different steps at specific times during the project, and there'll be a cost estimate done at each one of those phases, and then shared with Dewey and the staff to review that and compare, not only to do a cost control of each one of those, but there'll be, and it's pretty well known, there's a level of documentation where the project should be in the design process as it moves through, and we're very comfortable and familiar with doing that with the Dewey organization. For examples, with 40% is a deliverable, certain amount of items, there's a checklist that we have of 200 plus items that need to be included in that deliverable. At that point, the design is locked down and begins to move into engineering. All the design decisions are made up front. There's kind of a try to keep it avoidable, flexible, but that's the point. From 40% to 60%, and that's deliverable stage, is the engineering is done, or not done, but it continues, fills in the details, and staff will be looking for, reviewing how much should be included in there, beginning to establish an outline specification at that point, and we're confirming the systems and outlines at 60%. Once those are reconfirmed by budget and by the review, at that point, 60 right on to final docs, design shouldn't change. But we redo at 90% documents, so basically it's a back check, issue the documents, go through the review, continue through the checklist of items, see that they've all been addressed in that set, and make sure we're on budget, and that the systems are appropriate for the specifications for them.
Another component of that being a public school entity, you are responsible to go back to PDA, plan con documentation, and we are well versed in doing that. We've done that in multiple projects. So that kind of rides the tails of this construction documentation. And we know every step of the way what needs to get done. We'll work with your staff on the school board and within the school to get what we need from you in order to keep that process moving. So we know that that's also a crucial part of this.
Thank you.
If I may, just a follow-up on that. So what would be your method then to assure that all the owners' ideas are heard and thought about and addressed prior to you get to the segments of those final
Yeah,
stages?
absolutely. At the 40% phase, it's all rechecked. The program is rechecked with that, reviewed with the faculty and staff to confirm all program items are in there on budget. And honestly, there's always a bit of adjustment at that point, depending upon where we are with adjustment. That's when it's 40% is on the same. It's all rechecked.
We also pride ourselves on not being the architect that tells you what you need. We sit down very early on, whoever it is that the school board and the school decides is important in the decision-making process, to set a program of goals for the project. You've done a great outline already, so it's a great place to start, but we get into it even further, especially we'll do small group user meetings with teachers to get a little bit more focused on what does a kindergarten classroom look like in the Easton School District, and what does it need, and how do we fulfill that in keeping in the budget, with keeping with the goals of the project. So we kind of pride ourselves on really being hands-on with the users as far as you want us to take it. I've already sat down with the library and just designed the whole library to the max, and then we go back and check the estimate, check the budget, check what our scope is. We might have to dwindle that down, but you know, we're pretty good on delivering as much as possible. So
They never ask for too much, do they?
we always start off with that wish list, and then try to deliver as much of that as possible.
Question 3. Have you reviewed the draft contract and scope included in the RFP, including the agenda? Do you have the scope and services included in your fee?
Yes, 100%.
Concise answer.
How will you ensure that required land development and site approvals are all met in a timely fashion and the impact to the district is minimized?
I think the key, kind of going for the school, is that a lot of the site things are construction in the second phase of the project. It's after you're done with the interior, after you're done with the MEP upgrades, that's when you're going to be taking your building down. You're going to be doing parking lot work, you're going to be doing site work. So you have a little bonus time there, so to speak, with what approvals you need to go through. So, we're not squeezed into having those approvals day one when we get, contractors on board, we have some extra lag time there. So I think that's a real benefit, but we've had no issues, especially our civil engineers, are very familiar with the process. They hit the ground running, make sure that they are in line, getting together all the information they need up front so that they can go approval after approval and get what we need.
And our final question, please tell us what you know about Paxinosa Elementary School. What do you know about the needs of our students, and what do you think is lacking? How do you plan to address these issues?
I'll start with that. So obviously this school actually started as a high school, right? A long time ago. And it became a middle school. Now it's an elementary school. Paxinosa School is actually not this school, right? It's another school that was moved here. So I understand the history that's behind some of these moves and the way that the district has tried to move through these challenges, no question. So what is this school missing? To me, when I walk into the school, sometimes it doesn't really feel like an elementary. I don't get that quite going. I know teachers have worked really hard to try to get it that way with what they can, but I think with these renovations, I think that we can really make this feel much more like an elementary school for the kids. What are the important things? I hope that we touched on a lot of them in our presentation, whether that's security, community accessibility, creating the support system that they need in community spaces where parents can be more engaged in the education process. There's so many things that are very, very critical to making this an elementary school that will really help the students thrive. That's just one of them, but also integrate the community into using spaces like the gymnasium or using after hours, using the cafeteria for meetings or other PTA functions or the auditorium. I think that will also add a lot to the school.
I think right now, you're an elementary school using a high school. You still have so much remnants, the locker bays, the the art and the specialty classrooms are not geared towards elementary students, they're geared towards high school students. There's still vestiges of the old tech areas scattered throughout. So I think a big part of it is just making it elementary kid friendly. And I think we've done a pretty good job. The other locations, other schools, kind of tapping into that, knowing what really accomplishes that.
Is there any other questions?
As we look at this and we talk about it, it's always about communication, making sure people are made aware, and administration, board, so on and so forth. If there was some kind of a structured protocol added into the contract, do you have any concerns with that type of thing? In other words, knowing that your communication with Dewey and with the administration and, so on and so forth, but that it's actually documented what it is, so that we're sure that, we were just talking about, if there's a committee, how does the rest of the board get informed in everything?
We've
That
actually
structure's in there.
we've done that previously on projects. Our construction administration specialist has gone into board meetings and given, whether it's your executive board, whether it's your building and grounds board committee, giving them 10, 15-minute updates on where the construction is at that point, whether it's monthly and monthly. So that's definitely something we're very comfortable doing.
Mr. Fanel, every failure starts with a lack of good communication. Every failure starts that way. We will do everything we can to avoid that. We're transparent, we're open, we're not gonna charge extra, we're not gonna only do so many meetings, we're gonna do meeting minutes, we're gonna communicate. So critical, not just in design. Remember this, design is short. Design is easy. The construction is long. So what happens? Where do the kids move? What do the teachers have to do? What does the principal say? Where are the parents going? Are they informed? So sometimes that's even more challenging than when it's just in design. But working with Dewey, working with our full-time construction administrator, Ray, who has 30 years of experience, he's not here tonight, the king of communication, the king of detail, the king of note-taking. So we're going to put him on this, and we'll address that.
Okay, so a protocol in the contract is no big deal.
No, I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Protects everyone.
And can you just give a little bit of a feel? I know it's one thing when you design a new building, it's a lot easier to do things that are per se green and LEED and obviously, so
Yeah.
you know the lighting, the air units you're going to use. How far does that even take you towards, what is your degrees of green? That you would say that moves you towards?
It gets you pretty close. I mean, even today, the code standards are, they keep bumping up to greener and greener. So, for this project, we're at a code minimum, so that's gonna get you pretty close. And then what happens is you have to look at, life cycle and payback. Okay, what if we change this chiller efficiency from, 98 to 99%? What do we have to pay for that? What's the payback? Now, those are the type of things that we can look at. But, with the systems we're proposing, they're gonna be much greener than what they are now.
I'll just make a reference because I love my team so much and they're really awesome and experienced. Jess is sustainability expert. She has driven the entire LEED documentation project for the New Monroe campus, which is 3 buildings, 200,000 square feet on a green, pristine site. And she knows the ins and outs. This doesn't have to be a LEED building, but it can certainly have the features of sustainability that we really should be integrating into every building. And she'll be there to make sure that the team is sticking to that protocol.
It's very easy to create a green building these days. The efficiency, like Kevin was saying, efficiency of the system, the materials, they're all recycled anymore. That's just for a lot of it is the manufacturers. And it's key that you use low VOC material content materials in elementary school to begin with. So there's a lot of aspects of LEED buildings, green buildings that just by basis of the type of building that this is, being an elementary school, you're already doing.
I have a question.
Yes.
I suspect that the districts you've been working for, and I noticed those here in the Lehigh Valley, I don't know if you've done any other work elsewhere, but the ones in the Lehigh Valley, these districts are experiencing the same financial stress that we are here, and maybe to a lesser degree. I guess I would ask, In what ways have you respected those financial circumstances? Can you point to various things that you've done that have shown respect for the public dollar in some of these designs that you have created?
I can mention one thing personally, it's kind of small, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway, so you know what kind of people we are, right? So I work with Northampton School District, and they were phasing their project, moving kids in and out and doing all these gymnastics, right? So as we were stripping carpet up, you know, they said, we need temporary carpet to put in these classrooms because we don't have anything. Now, we ripped it up, it's not there because of the way the phasing plan was and what we had to do in the project. I went to our reps, our carpet reps, what do you have out there? Do you have a program that you can just give this school material that they can use? You know, that maybe you discarded or it's marketing product or it's out of date or whatever it is. I got that for them. I don't think it saved them much money, but you know what? It went a long way in them trusting me that I was going to do whatever I could to make the decisions for them. That's a very small example. For us, the key is know where to use the money. We're not interested in winning awards. We want to win the hearts of our clients for doing the right thing. Okay, so that means being careful where we spend the money. Okay, looking at every material. Where can we save money on this? Is there an alternate that we can do? You know, maybe you want to renovate the auditorium. We can give you some different levels to look at. What would different seats be like? Should we just paint it? How much are the lights costing? Are there other alternatives? And even when the contractors come back to us with options for changing the product because maybe they found something that was more cost effective, we're going to look at that and try to get that savings back for you. They have no ego in this. You know, it's not about that. So that's just a couple of things that are important. I know that every one of you have done.
There's
things like that.
additional things, even looking at the materials. We've done cost payback, especially NEP-wise, cost payback on systems, which I'm sure we would evaluate the two proposed MEP systems, or mechanical systems, to see which is your better efficient system, which is gonna save space within the building, which is going to work out better in the long run. We've done the same thing with materials. We'll get, you know, a VCT product and another sheet product or something and have them being prepared. What's the maintenance cost on them? What are your yearly fees gonna be to maintain and keep that product? So we go further than just the construction products and what's being installed. We kind of take a look at long-term, what is this gonna cost you? So I think that's an added step that we are more than willing to help you out with.
I just have a general question. Have you worked on renovating any buildings in your portfolio, which is pretty impressive, I might add, that were that old?
Yes, we have. We actually have extensive experience in Philadelphia School District. Very urban, very old schools.
Okay.
I didn't include them here because, you know, we're a little away from that and I want to kind of.
No, that's fine. I'm just concerned with the age of the building about
We go back to the
surprises,
1800s.
you know, when things were
The
built.
1800s
Okay.
when we were renovating.
Yeah, and that's what makes us good at this. You know,
Okay.
so if you give us that trust, we're gonna deliver for you because we've
Okay.
done projects of this age before.
And, yeah, and just what's left of the
John
original
John
diagrams,
wrote this
yeah.
weird thing tonight. You gotta give him the
It
floor
was
for
nice
this.
lead-in, because it's the whole thing I brought along just in case you asked. We're working on the Matthew Running building at the state capitol system. And this came out of that project. It's a roofing project.
The Ryan building is right next to the Capitol, it's a historic building.
Kind
Very,
of odd
very,
looking.
very old.
And don't see it much today. People tend to be a little bit crazy.
It's best
It's not. It's not.
Good guess.
No, it's
But it's
pliable,
close.
it's flexible. That's your kryptonite.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's from the time they were built in 1890. We actually still do use it today. It's in the regular type of roofing system. It's lead wedge. This is actually lead wool. It's not steel wool, it's lead wool. It's used to pack into those joints. The Spring Garden Street First Presbyterian Church of this one, I personally was the record for that building. It's also got the complete restoration of the system built also.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Ton of
Nice
AC,
meeting all of you. Yeah.
ton of air
A ton
conditioning.
of air conditioning.
Yes, that was the block of ice they had in the back of the State Theater or any other theaters, possibly your own even your storage space. It's the amount of cooling that comes off the bottom of a block of ice. And that's block, cubic foot of water is 60 pounds, so you're looking at, I guess it's about 35 cubic feet of ice. They haven't blown things over. Kevin, nice to meet you. You got one?
Overloads of
Thank
floors.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Josh, give us 1 second.
They're on hold, so.
So, I picked up the wrong bag and it had corn in it, and I can't, we have a farmer in my office, so, anyway, I found that in the hallway. I know, thank you.
Just want to remind you, those are some very good questions. The ones I heard, just please remember, I expect to get those same questions to everybody, so if you didn't write it down, write it down now. Thank you. Josh? Say it again? I'm 2 hours early.
He had us here at 5, so I don't know how early
We're about finished,
I'll finish at dinner.
I wanna know if this is a pizza.
Dinner.
Is that the PowerPoint or the PDF?
The PowerPoint was that?
No, no.
All right. Thank you guys for coming. I'm sure you heard the structure of the meeting, but we're gonna just remind you again. You'll have 20 minutes to present. We'll have 20 minutes to ask and receive answers on questions.
I
Okay.
do
And
this.
the floor is
Okay, I'm
yours.
just gonna start the timer and then
25.
start your thing.
We'll hold that 25. Let me-
Okay. If I move this aside a little bit, okay. There you go. Just
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here and possibly share this project with you. I'm going to introduce the members of our team, but one of the things I want to do before I do that is also my job tonight and our team's job tonight is to leave you with the impression and confidence that this team, every dollar that you put into this project is going to be a smart dollar. That every option that we bring to you, every decision you need to make has options, and every option that we bring to you is achievable. So with that being said, my name is Robert First. I'm a registered architect. Next slide, please. So this, my name is Robert First. I'm a new architect first. I have 35 years of education design experience. I'm a nationally certified architect, a U.S. Green building professional, and I'm going to be in charge of leading the project and working with you. With me tonight is Liz Shankwater, who's also a registered architect, our senior project manager, Terry DeGroot, our civil engineer, Kevin Burns, representing our consultant, mechanical electrical, and also Michelle Leidica, our interior designer. Clyde Onums, back there running the PowerPoint, he's our project facilitator, and Mike Berard is our kitchen consultant. One of the things I just want to start off with is, our vision of a successful project is to follow your wishes. We consider ourselves good listeners. Listen carefully, understand your goals. Every project is unique. You don't apply the same solution to every project. Embrace personal responsibility, personal commitment.
we're on the project 24/7. And the expectation, whatever you have, our goal is to exceed that. This is our project team, and really it's just to point out to you, we understand that all the directions come from the top, come from Eastern Area School District. And our charge is to work with you as a team and also to work with the engineering that you represent. This team, the reason I assembled this team is we also have quite a bit of experience in large-scale projects. This is a fairly substantial project. Our projects have ranged, just these 4 examples, the Colonial Academy with IU-20, $13 million, as is brand new middle school, the Freedom Gym addition done a few years ago, and also the Brockwell Middle School, that was our largest project, $49 million. So we have the large project experience. Our team can handle a project of this size. Also want to bring to the table for you, because most of you may or may not be aware, but I have worked with this district, I think since about 2002 or 2003. And one of the projects I'm most proud of, and hopefully the same for the district, was March Elementary. We were the architects, I was the lead architect, and we handled the renovation and expansion of Francis A. March. That is really that is my proudest project, I'll be quite honest with you. The addition that was added on the back was very neighborhood friendly, and you can see that. In that addition, we've added a couple classrooms, we added the food service and an art room. We did it very tastefully. This is an example, if I'm sure you've all been in it, the cafetorium, which was restored back to its historic use, and it's a great multi-functional space. The typical 1913 classroom, the goal there was to restore those classrooms back to a period piece, so they're quite capable of handling things of that nature. And another project, Shawnee Elementary, this was a project that had 5 different additions. We reconfigured the entire school. That's a photograph of the entrance that was added. And security in the school is always a big issue, and that's the office I'm sure you're all aware of. And this is a more modern classroom. We showed you the March. This is a modern classroom version at Shawnee. And a very kid-friendly. One of the things we're going to talk about further on is this obviously is a high school that was converted to a middle school that's now an elementary school. How do we turn that into a real-life elementary school? This is just an example of a very playful, friendly, child-friendly place with a great connection to the outdoors. Now with that said, I want to turn over to Lee, who's going to share with you our site concept.
Yeah, we've been involved with this building in 2007 when we took the schools, the elementary schools from March and Shawnee, and combined them. So we're very familiar with the building. We're very familiar with the site. The main goals in how we worked out this site development, student safety, access to the property and the grounds, the neighborhoods, make what we're doing appealing and fit in with the neighborhood, control, how you want to control access to the site, and then the program. This is, a middle school was the last use, now it's an elementary school, and we want to take this and turn it into a real elementary school complex. That's the reason we located the parking in there and the play fields behind. We'll elaborate on that a little bit later. But now I'd like to introduce Terry. He can talk a little bit about the technical aspects of what we're doing.
All right, good evening. We have looked at several options for access to the rear of the site. This sketch is showing a driveway on the Spring Garden Street. That will allow staff to access at that point without interrupting the bus loading on North 12th Street. That can be gated on the bus. We also show on this plan an optional driveway from the loading area on the bottom of the sketch there, past what's labeled as the KG addition. We'll talk about that later. If desired, that connection could be made. There is something to be said for some green space out there as well. So we have a lot of options, and of course, to come up with that answer, we'll sit down with you and
Okay, some of the highlights of this enlarged plan. One of the things is the fencing. We're not looking at putting up chain link fencing. Similar behind your clock is a picture in this area, and in that area is a picture of the fencing that we did at March with the brick piers and the ornamental fencing. Right there is the picture. Again, always being respectful to the neighborhood. The gated entrances so that you have control about who comes on the property and not. And then the play surface, the play area directly behind the neighborhood housing, rather than putting a hot black paved parking lot in that area. We've considered things like phasing that we'll talk about later, but we feel that this will give us a secure area. This is a paved, the area between the building and the paved hard court and the playground could actually be some sort of stamped concrete or something. You could put temporary bollards there, so you restrict traffic when students are coming back and forth from recess, when students are coming out from the gym in that area. You want to take it?
Next slide, please. Okay, now we get a chance to touch base on the building. And since the proposal, I've also been able to spend quite a bit of time to just continue to study this building. As we said, we worked in this building a few years ago, so we're quite familiar with it. And what I want to share with you, we'll start basically on the ground floor level. And then I'm going to answer a question on the next slide as to why are we proposing an addition. So you'll see those 4 yellow spaces are the kindergartens. And we feel that an addition of a new room is going to give you some other options that you may not have in other approaches. But in addition to this, on this level, you can see on the red arrow in the upper left there, that's the public access to the gym. And we feel during the phasing, the mechanical is going to drive this project, and the architectural features obviously follow that. But there we're suggesting the auxiliary gym could obviously become a temporary cafeteria during the phasing. And also the group of rooms that are underneath on this side could be used for phasing, in addition to the modulars that are outside. On this scheme, we have a couple of other ideas. One of the things we hope with our ideas and our concepts and our experiences, we're going to suggest maybe a few bonus areas that can fit into the budget where you want to consider. This one, for instance, because you have the gym, maybe take this side, convert it to 2 usable locker rooms and public toilets, which would allow us to put security gates here and keep people from going up the steps, because right now the bathroom is there. So we think that's a space. We're suggesting maybe you take the locker rooms on the other side and just clean it up into a real room, and then therefore you have an activity room that's very flexible for you to do as you like. Now again, the kindergarten is at the lower level, and as we look at the site plan, there's a special needs kindergarten right here at the door. So we really feel the kindergarten needs to stay down at the lower level, and the addition of an addition, I want to explain that. On the next slide, one of the things that I did in value engineering and looking at your building and how to approach this is this. At first glance, you may think that converting this music suite into the 5th kindergarten makes the most sense. It does in the aspect of 2-dimensional. It's just a room, but a couple of things have to happen. I brought this photograph in because this windows were closed up back in the 70s right here, and a wall was added that closed that up. And I really think, my professional opinion, that not only is going to be very, very expensive to add windows in to gain that room. You certainly wouldn't want a kindergarten on this side of the building that has no windows. It's maybe closer to the other 4, but it's certainly the same bad situation that's on the other side of the building. So building a new room that's connected to the outside, and I'll show you that in a quick rendering that's going to be the follow. So we really feel that moving the music room upstairs, also for the noisy activity up on the 1st floor. So again, just a couple of quick, rendering ideas, looking down into the addition, and a couple of quick views. This is really just artistic, expression of something. The next floor, as we get up, I want to talk about the 1st floor, which is basically That's the challenging floor. But one thing, when I go back to the addition, we're now able to consider adding one or two rooms on both the first floor and the second floor above. You could shell it in now, you could just, we build a concrete floor for a roof, and you can add it in the future with little to no disruption to the entire site of the program, if you ever need expandability. Now, going back, from that addition, I really want to just bring you back in the front door. Our ideas on this, obviously this is the front door. One of the first things we do is, in the phasing and in the construction, is create a secure vestibule. And again, we're looking at these things long-term, 50 years out, 30, 40, 50 years. I'd like to suggest that what we're doing here is create a new office where the locker bank is here. Create that new office, and when that's done, the old office can move right across into that secure vestibule. That door you can't get through. So you come in the secure vestibule, you need to go into the office, and we take the old office, and that's where your central registration, your family connections, that's on that side. What's great about this is your office is never out of commission. The main office is never out of commission during the construction. It's always at the front door.
I apologize. I was trying to write it down and catch what you were saying again. I don't want to miss it. Can you go back to the new office in the vestibule, or moving the office in the vestibule? I was trying to take notes. I just missed it. I want to catch that.
Right now, this is the locker bank.
Can you point there, Bob?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm behind you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. So the locker bank would be converted into a new office. So there you solve the office problem. You bring the school renovation and create an office. Then when that's done, you take the old office and you create the central registration right there. You come in the door, you go in, you go out. You never get in the building.
So just a flip flop.
Yep, flip flop, and then you use that space. And those two blue spaces always remain at the front of the door. The other things on this level then is obviously there's two groupings. There's the green, which is the first grade, and what you'll see on the next floor too is I'm trying to group the education levels together. So right there is the first grade and the Head Start room, and then this level here is the second grade. Now, a couple of bonus features. I really think when we look at this as previously a high school and a middle school, this media center is way too big. And there's a lot of wasted space in there. So what I'm suggesting we do there, consolidate the media center into that dotted area, and you get what I'm going to just call for now a couple of bonus rooms. You can create two classrooms which are very similar to what you'll see on the second floor, and they're accessible from the library, so you don't lose a classroom in the library. This classroom is accessible from the library. This classroom, I just labeled it as a special ed, accessible from both the library and the hallway. Again, we're always looking for the flexibility and the ability for things to change as your programs change. Also on this floor then, there's the East Hall offices at the end of this hall with a nice glass wall. And then over here, we're going to touch on this, a new kitchen and the cafeteria. The next slide, I just really want to show you, this is a before. This is a similar school, Salisbury High School. This was what their lobby looked like before we did this renovation. This is what the lobby and the main office looks like now. Just an example of really taking a bad space and making it pretty spectacular for entrance to the building. The last level, the second level, again, you see the groupings, 4th grade in the lime green, the 5th grade over here. Change this door, create a new door here. So this is a pod, that's a pod, so to speak, and then there's another pod here for the 3rd grade grouping. Go basically reconfigure the art room, pick up another room here, and here's bonus number 2. Consideration at this point, take these two classrooms that are in the space, take the wall out, put a folding wall between it. You now have a space you can bring two classes together. You can keep the wall closed, you got 2 more classrooms. Whenever you have a bubble or something to go through, you can use them for whatever you'd like to. But in this aspect, any grade level, at this level or even downstairs, you can come and now you have a large roof, something that's not technically in the building. So that's a bonus feature. I want to turn over to Kevin to talk about HVAC phasing.
Thanks, Bob. In a lot of ways, phasing and budget will be driving this project.
What I'd like to talk to you specifically is how the phasing relates to the existing HVAC system and some of the challenges that are associated with that and keeping the building occupied at the same time that construction is going on. My role is to design you an HVAC system that meets your goals for comfort, for energy efficiency, for ease of maintenance, etc. I'm not going to get into all of the details on this slide, but I would like to point out from an energy standpoint, we have a couple of buildings that have been doing exceptionally well as far as benchmarking. In the lower right corner, I point out Brockville Middle School, which was a new building, a little bit different than this. Thank you. Ended up with an operating cost for energy of about a third of what a national average building would be for that size and type. It ended up being around 79 cents a square foot instead of $1.93, which is the national average. So that's pretty impressive. It also was the only building that I've worked on that has a 100 out of 100 scale on the Energy Star rating for a building. The difference between LEED and Energy Star is LEED is guessing as to what your performance will be. Energy Star is a measurement of what it's actually doing compared to what other buildings are doing. So that's one that we're very proud of. I don't want to go into too much detail about the left side of the slide, but I would like to point out that each of those different colored areas represents a portion of the building that's served by a single air handling system. So this is important to understand because when we affect any portion of one of those colored areas, it has an impact on all of the other areas of that same color. We have to be cognizant of that as we're planning to go through the phasing for this construction project. We believe that our knowledge of this building from previous construction projects that we've done in this building, as well as our understanding of the basic way that the building is currently zoned, will go a long way towards providing you with a good solution for this construction project.
Thanks, man.
Bob talked about the kitchen. I just wanted, while we were still on phasing, we feel that the mechanical system, because the way it's split up and the way it's zoned, is pretty much going to drive the phasing of the project. The approach that we're looking at is to first do the central core and the infrastructure. That means an enlarged chiller, a new cooling tower, because we're going to be air conditioning the entire building. Get that in, get the branches to down the corridors of electric and everything else, so that when we attack phases, those utilities are already there and in place, and we don't disturb the rest of the project. So when Kevin says that a unit on the upper floor also does some spaces on the first floor, we can't think about phasing by floor. When we approach it that way, we're phasing in zones or halves of the building. And the phasing approach that we're looking at always allows for access, emergency egress, and always thinks about segregating and separating the construction from the student activity areas. So this is a kitchen slide. We can go back to the full slide. Yeah, this is a kitchen slide, and there's a lot that we have to talk about. You know, we did the kitchen for an example for the Shawnee School. That project did not have a dishwashing area. We approached this, Mike approached this. This is the space that we're given. Can we provide you with a full cooking kitchen? There are some services, storage downstairs. We have a cooler box outside. And again, it all has to do with a great amount of input from you, dealing with Mike, dealing with us to develop it. So this is just to give you a good feeling that we can fit everything in here with the required space. What we do lose is that little prep area or the serving area for the faculty, to the faculty dining. But otherwise, we're fitting in here. It's a line system similar to elementary, opening up this wall with an access grill so they come in and they come in and they go out. So.
Yeah, and just to follow up with Lee, then we grabbed a photograph there to just show you, if we open up that wall, we can secure that for nighttime activities, but it also opens up the room to the cafeteria and opens up the kitchen. very nicely and flows together. So, the last thing I'd just like to do is really just spend very quickly. I went back in my own archives in my mind, and I just wanted to also let you know, we just talked about, I mean, obviously we did March, we did the Shawnee. We actually did the addition originally in this building. We also started, the first project I actually did was the science edition, the West Science edition on the high school, of which we worked with Dewey, and we got that whole thing through plan, I think it was 6 months. So again, cooperation, teamwork, and working in your best interest. So I just kind of wanted to bring this to the table with the fact that previously we've done quite a bit of extensive study on the pool at the high school. So I just really wanted to just bring this to your attention. I know there's a lot of new board members who may have never seen this. This plan, taking the old pool, converting it to a weight room with locker rooms, and then building a new 6 or 8 lane pool with locker rooms here. And then I didn't bring the other slide, but there's basically seating on a balcony up there that's accessible from the upper level of the high school. I really just, I want to do it in a couple things. I just wanted to, to basically share that with you, that we've done a lot of studies. We know the district. We've been working in here, since back in the early 2000s. So we're very familiar with the district. Some of our employees, our office is actually in the district. We're in Easton. Local architects and versions of Buffalo have been here for over 30 years in the city of Easton and downtown and now out in Palmer Township. So we know the district, some of the employees actually live in the district, and even the ones that don't, we're very close, we know the neighborhood. So with that, I think we're probably pretty good on time. I just want to close up again, with basically, what did this team that I bring to you tonight, why did we put this team together? And what advantages do we have besides maybe some of the, hopefully, the bright ideas and the options that we've given you in the plan? This team has worked together for, some of us for over 15 years together, some of us going on 20, and some of us don't want to admit how much time we've actually worked together. It's starting to get a little, gray in the temples and way beyond that. But this team has worked for you. We've worked together. We know how to work together. We know how to coordinate. We know how to work with Dewey. They're the best partner that we ever worked with on projects. Rockville Middle School in Bethlehem, not a change order. $49 million project without a change order. We're not perfect. I'm not promising you that, but I will promise you we'll work as hard as we have to make this project successful for you.
Thank you. We actually have a couple questions.
Sure.
Already, and the way we usually do, we like to have fun here.
Sure, I may.
If everybody has the answer, just buzz in.
Yeah.
Anyone on your team?
Is there a prize?
All right, we have a 3-part question. What multi-use and space efficiencies are incorporated into your concept plan?
Okay. We can go back to a slide, but while we're doing that, let me just refer back to, I think, one of them in particular, the addition to the kindergarten. The fact that that's in the proper place, it also gives you the ability to expand. It gives you a very simple expansion of that side of the building. The second big one is the media center. I mean, I really think that media center, that's more than 3 times the size of the libraries at March or Shawnee. So it's not an elementary space. It's got that great space frame in it. We want to keep that as the media center and add those 2 classrooms that you see in the yellow in the center there. And that one also on the right side can be a library classroom or a computer lab. It's not something that's in your program, but maybe, maybe as things go on, you may decide you want to do a media lab. So those rooms give you great flexibility. And then we have, of course, on the upper level, on the second floor, the purple rooms. Take what you have and convert that into a dual classroom. So I think we've really kind of tried to think out of the box, convert this to an elementary, and how can you be flexible and address program spaces that you and I don't even know about yet. They're going to come 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Thank you. Second part, how does your concept plan accommodate community and after-hours use of the facility?
The three spaces that you'd see community in, potentially the cafeteria space, the auditorium space, the gymnasium space, the auxiliary gym space. Through the parking area locating over here at the auxiliary gym, you still have the ability to secure this area and down here. So this player yard is secure. So at evening time, you have direct access in here. As Bob mentioned earlier, locating new restrooms for the public in that locker area would then limit their need to have to travel past the stair tower and potentially have access to the rest of the building. So you can control that down there. The library potentially could have some other public uses in the evening. That can be accessed off the main. The auditorium obviously has access off of the outside entrance and then the entrance here to the cafeteria. So you can pretty much secure the central core of the building.
Thank you. The third part of our first question. How does your concept design enhance and promote building security and safety?
Again, to reiterate, the approach that we do to phasing, one of the things is when we do the cafeteria, the kitchen, relocate that in the auxiliary gym. Again, all those things are what functions do you need to happen to protect the students or the students' need to continue without crisscrossing over construction lines. You can't do that. So the auxiliary use of the auxiliary gym, auxiliary gyms are not typically found in elementary schools. That's a space that we feel that you could use for that. Site access, we discussed that earlier, where we don't want cross traffic. You want the parking traffic not to interfere with the incoming and dismissing students. So we have that new access onto Spring Garden Street. Likewise, your deliveries in this area, try to secure this area where the students are coming and going for recess, so we don't have any cross traffic in that vehicular traffic on the outside.
Thank you.
And then as Bob mentioned, the security, the vestibule is paramount. You've got to come in here, you can never go through this door, you got to come in through the office.
And you would tie that together, obviously, with your card pass security system throughout the building. And again, that's something we need to work really closely with you as a district and what your goals are.
Question 2. How will you work with our project management team to make sure that cost control, schedule, and quality are maintained?
Well, the best examples I can give that is the fact that I have personally worked with Arif and Dewey since 92, so we've been going on almost 25 years. We've had a series of successful projects. We've never had any project that two of us have worked on that has gone to arbitration or lawsuits, or really even just you can always come to the trailer in our construction projects and feel like you're welcome and not feel like you just walked into a waterfront. A lot of times the contractors, at each other's, he's responsible for this. So I go back to one of the key points I said in the beginning, personal responsibility. One of the things I admire about Arif is he works 7 days a week, 24/7, and I only try to keep up with him from that standpoint. And I think again I wouldn't put words in his mouth, but he knows that myself personally, the team that I bring, that's the kind of people I surround myself with. We're going to do the job, we're going to do what it takes, and we're not going to shy away from responsibility. We're humans, we make mistakes. We've worked hard, and we've been very fortunate that we haven't made anything serious. But if we do, we'll stand up. We'll stand up for it. And if it's something that we've got to, if we've made an error, a true error, and we have to consider paying for it, then hey, I got it in my back pocket. So it's not something we'll shy away from. But our whole goal is, as a team, is that doesn't happen. We want a trouble-free job. We want your superintendent to be able to be a superintendent. We want you people on the board to be able to do your jobs, not worry about the construction. Again, what I said earlier on was, when we bring you as a team, when we bring you options, when we bring them to the table, we want them to be real options that are achievable, not just pie in the sky. Oh, we could do this if money wasn't an object. We want to bring you real options that you can decide, and we give you the best advice and the best series of options, along with doing it. We're very proficient at that. And say, here are your options, here's the benefits, here's the downside, here's the time, here's the cost. We'll work very closely with them, you know, on a daily basis, literally a daily basis throughout the project. So whenever we need to meet, we've had my phone number, he knows how to get hold of me. And we just meet, we hash it out, and you know, we're good to go.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, you have part two?
Yeah. As you started talking about the team and everything there, how do you assure that all the owners' ideas and thoughts are heard and addressed prior to getting to your final design?
I think one of the important things is that initial design is literally to sit down, you know, with the district and whatever team you create board members, all the board members, a series of them, your administration obviously, and sit down at that very first meeting and set goals and parameters. Again, it goes back to communication, to understanding, you know, what your goals were, and keeping track of those. So when we meet periodically, which would be often, certainly be coming back to the board at least every month, probably in progress, maybe a couple of times a month. Going through that progress, going through that checklist that we created in the beginning, these are the things we wanted to achieve. Check them off the checklist. We're hitting them. You know, this one we're not quite there. We need some help. We need some adjustment. But it's to really answer your question. It's never for you to just hire the architect and then walk away from the project. We're quite capable of, you know, working the project, but whatever level that you as the board want to have, whatever level you want to have, that's up to you, and we have no problem with that. You want to come in to sit in meetings, that's fine with us. We know you're very busy. This is not a paid job. We really appreciate the fact that nobody gets paid to sit here and do the job. We all get the criticism when it comes out of the other end if it's not right. Our job is to see that that doesn't happen. And I think we've been very successful at that. I'm proud of not winning awards for March. That wasn't my goal. But I'm proud of the letters I got from the neighbors in that neighborhood. They sent me personal letters and said, this road is beautiful. It fits into the neighborhood. That would awards. I don't need a trophy. I keep those letters. I really do. That's my reward.
Thank you. Number 3, have you reviewed the draft contract and scope included in the RFP, including the agenda? Do you have the scope and services included in your fee?
Yes. That's a simple yes.
Number 4, how will you ensure that required land development and site approvals are all met in a timely fashion and the impact to the district is minimized?
Well, that our registered civil engineer, who's an expert at that.
We start by understanding what the city wants, so we do already have a pretty good understanding. We have worked from the city on several projects. So coupling with their requirements with your needs, and in terms, sometimes we might need some relief from the city, zoning or waivers or something like that. But, so we take your needs and make sure that we can get them through the city. In addition to approvals from the city, we have to deal with the planning commission and the Lothair County Conservation District for ENS permitting and NPDS permitting. And oftentimes on these projects, that NPDS permitting is the critical path to the schedule. It's a long, drawn-out process that we know very well. We will make sure that we are diligent in staying on top of that rules process. We've always been successful in making the schedule meet the requirements, and we continue to do so. Thank you.
A final question. Please tell us what you know about Paxton Oaks Elementary School. What do you know about the needs of our students? And what do you think is lacking? How do you plan to address these issues?
Okay. Let me just sort of a big broad stroke again in terms of what we presented. Obviously, this was a high school converted to a middle school and elementary. So we understand the elementary schools in the district. Our K through March, through Shawnee, but still, every building is different. Every building can respond to your program in a slightly different manner. There's things that we can't change, neither can you. You could never throw enough money at this building to turn it into a brand new elementary that you never know the difference in. But I think in what we're showing you is creating the pods, grouping the classroom levels together for that interaction between those students at those grade levels, those teachers. That in effect, as best as this building can, is kind of a pod concept, which is very prevalent at Shawnee, where we did that. So we tried to do that. I've shown you some of the bonus features that you get, the extra classrooms, the kindergarten, I think, which is a practical solution. To spend the money to try to put it in the music room is just money. If you build half of the addition, quite honestly, that's, not only is that not feasible money-wise, but you start touching the wall, you can affect it structurally, you create an area that maybe in the future you get water. If you know what the old home ec rooms used to like, they're below ground. When you're looking out those windows, you're seeing the road. Well, you want a kindergarten that you're looking out, seeing the bottom of the cars. Plus, you got the turnaround and everything that has to happen there for the dumpsters and the kitchen deliveries. So we just feel strongly that, we're not going to come in and say can't be done, but we don't think that's a wise use of your money. We really don't. We feel we're better off putting. It'll cost $100,000 to put windows in. Well, it's better spent on the addition and flexibility of grades. It's better spent on that folding wall to have a double classroom where you can bring two classes together. I'm hoping that all of those things, those have really see the foresight. Some bright ideas, also some foresight, and also understand we have not sat down with you at this point. All of this we've done through RFP, through experience. That doesn't substitute for sitting down with you in a room, and taking the stupid coat off, and rolling up our sleeves, and get to work. That's really what it's about.
I'm going to open up to see if there's any other questions, and I'm actually going to start with one, and it has to do with this screen. Essentially, we have a way to come in the park, in the new parking area, from 13th and from 12th. Now, 13th is very busy, 12th not busy at all, but Spring Garden is usually very crowded, parking on both sides. Why did you decide to put another entrance, essentially a third one, entrance or exit, on Spring Garden?
Basically, for the main reason to drive that was student safety. That way, if we're dismissing and arriving with school buses on North 12th Street, we can cordon that off, basically, and all our arriving teachers or arriving parking can come off of 13th Street. Spring Garden. 13th Street is a crowded street, like you said, and it's difficult to get in and get out of there. So any parking, people accessing the lot, our plan was to bring them off of Spring Garden Street. Not to make that a major entrance, but just at those critical times. The other thing is when the football stadium events are going on, you're closing that street typically for buses, band convenes there. You could still have this as a parking area accessed off of Spring Garden without worrying about, no, I have a pass and I can get into this pass, and then you're weaving in and out of band members. So during events of coming in, you can access it off of there.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple. As you talked about communication, and obviously you said about sitting down up front if you haven't done or anything else. But it does come down to communication. And one of the things we talk about sometimes so that everybody knows where we're headed and what we're doing is like communication protocol. If we were to actually develop and put into the contract a communication protocol, do you have any concerns with that?
I think it's a good idea. Very good.
And going back to where you were talking about the air handling and all the mechanicals and everything, obviously we're looking and thinking, well, we know this isn't going to be a LEED building, and obviously you made the point that we're not talking LEED and everything else. But what does that do for us, and how do you look at how far that's going to get us efficiency-wise now?
A lot of it comes down to the existing envelope for the building. So there are limitations on how much energy savings we can realize. But as far as the mechanical and electrical systems, that's where we have full control. At that point, it really comes down to how far you're interested in taking potential savings. If that's one of the key driving goals for you, we can certainly give you something that's going to have an excellent energy efficiency for this building. We've done that in existing buildings. We can retrofit systems which will provide you very good energy efficiency. The trade-off is that it ends up costing you more money up front. And if you're looking at the building from a life cycle standpoint, and that's your driving goal, sometimes it's better to spend a little bit of money up front to realize savings for the next 25 or 30 years.
And you would share those options with us.
Oh, certainly, certainly. It's tough to do in this short time.
Right.
And actually, another thing to just add to Kevin, we really haven't even talked about lighting, which, lighting is being replaced throughout the building. So I think from a VE and a cost standpoint, I think we really should investigate LED lighting, because again, it might be initially a more upfront cost, but the lifespan is phenomenally longer, and the energy efficiency would be much greater, and it actually would reduce some of this heat load. So that's how all of these dynamics come together. So we absolutely want to recommend this for not only is HVAC, but the lighting, which is key in the building.
And that goes hand in hand with the electrical needs to now air condition the rest of the building. We're going to be looking at an increase in electrical service, whatever we can do to decrease that existing load by going to LED or something like that helps offset that additional cost of increasing that electrical service.
Yeah, just obviously, it's a very old building. You had said at the beginning you've done some prior experience with that building. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What have you done with that building before? And have you had experience renovating older buildings like this as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And the March obviously is 1913, much
Okay.
older than that.
Okay.
This is in the 25s, I think. But in 2007, when we brought the two elementary schools into this school, the idea was to keep the identity of the individual schools and not merge them together for a year and a half, and then pull them apart so the children don't know what school they're going back to, that kind of thing. At that time, we did extensive work to make sure that the two halves had their own boys and girls bathrooms. The high school had a girls' bathroom in this quadrant and a boys' bathroom in this quadrant. So we did all that work. We did extensive work downstairs in to create the kindergarten area. We didn't go full bore. We left some of the existing casework in place just because it was a temporary situation. We didn't want to do a full renovation. But we did add bathrooms in those areas so that the kindergartens now have bathrooms.
And I think March was occupying the second floor, and it was almost self-sufficient on that floor, except for the cafeteria and the gym, things that they had to get downstairs. So that's, yes, we have experience in this building. And March is a great example of a very old building. And we have others. We've renovated Salisbury High School, which was a series of additions originally built in the mid-50s. That's, again, fabulous considering what it started with, fabulous building. I've been involved in, I think, 12 different Zetland School District projects, renovations, additions, not just new buildings, but since back in the 90s. That's when we first met up and started working with me as a representative. So we've got, we could have brought a lot more, but with 25 minutes.
Yeah,
but I can assure you, if you want more information, we've got a laundry list of renovations, and actually, I will say it's a key factor in renovation, because architects who specialize in new buildings, it's the back of the sheet is a blank sheet of paper. You can do what you want. You get a building like this, now you really got to think out of the box. Now you got to come through with it. Now you have to tackle problems that you can't solve. No amount of money solve that. So, but it all goes to experience. 40 years, in architecture, 35 years, primarily doing schools. Local architects, in addition to that, I'm the education person. We also do, with Buckle Architects, a lot of medical work. I mean, that's a primary aspect of it. So I will say, in terms of the medical and the technology, and talk about lighting and energy efficiency, with the clients that we work with in New Jersey and the hospital field, there's a lot of knowledge in there that we can't necessarily spread out tonight. But believe me, that knowledge, particularly when it comes to just what with a hospital, never shuts down.
Right.
At least the school from 3 o'clock to the next morning to maybe do something. Hospital, 24/7, 365. Phasing, tackling those kind of projects, that wealth of knowledge is right here for your taking.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Superintendent?
Yeah, I suspect that the districts from whom you've worked in the past have had some financial restrictions. Recently, could you offer up some examples of how you have respected some of those financial limitations in either your work or your designs?
There's a number of projects. One I can think about is when we designed Nazareth Middle School, which is right up the street, you've probably been there, the entire natatorium was an alternate. To give you an instance. That was like almost $5 million. Probably somewhere in the $5 million range. We designed that whole building to function without the pool. They weren't sure whether they wanted to spend the money for the pool. So that entire addition was designed as an alternate. And that gave the board, after the bids came in, to see the numbers for real, not estimates, not make believe, but real numbers, and decide if they wanted to bid it, which they did. We had alternates, really in terms of every project we tackled with, alternates. Terrazzo floors are without a doubt the best way to go in a school for maintenance and longevity and appearance, but sometimes they don't fit the budget. So the bid project with another, even 2 or 3 alternative floors, and see what the cost benefit is. That's why I go back to whether it's bid day or meeting, as Mr. Fennell suggested, meeting, going through that list and saying, look, here's what you want to accomplish. Let's sub-bullet it. Here's a couple of ways to do it. We can pursue it any of these ways. We can pursue it all of these ways. A lot of times it's no more effort on the design part. It's writing a spec. It's doing an alternate. So very, very familiar with that approach. Very familiar with working with students. Very familiar with bringing the bid to a district, to any of them, and saying, here's what everything that you wanted, and it's broken down nicely, and let's see, does it spread the whole, with the budget, can we do everything? Many times we can. Surprisingly, many times we can do. I'll give another example that's not school related to Mr. Reinhardt is City of Bethlehem. I did all the window replacement at City Hall in the City of Bethlehem in the public service building down at the Civic Center. They had budgeted through a grant to do 2 elevations, 3 stories, 2 elevations of the City Hall. I came up with the way, and they worked with me on that. We ended up doing both buildings, all 4 floors of one building and all 3 floors of City Hall for the same budget, not a penny more. We replaced all of those windows. Rather than rip them out, we found a way to do inserts.
That's what we're talking about.
And that's
what we want to hear.
That's what we want.
Just woke me up with a shot.
The other thing I want to add is when you talk about terrazzo floors, you think of the level of, Michelle's sitting here and she's pretty quiet, but when we come and we all discuss what the level of finish is, her expertise is taking, you think it's just a VCT floor, but taking that VCT floor and making it, look incredible. So you've got that punch, you've got that feel. It's a very durable product, and it's an economical product. But with her expertise, it brings it up a notch where you don't even realize.
And also crosses between education and healthcare again. Wayfinding, designing the corridor to not only just be something aesthetic, functional, but wayfinding, finding your way through the building. Very prevalent in hospitals. How I found my way to the ER, but in schools, that's something we can look at. How I find my way to the second grade, the third grade. I don't want to leave Michelle out, so I may ask if maybe somebody could just ask her questions. she feels good about it.
Thank you guys very much, for coming, we really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it, and we really look forward to
Just the VGA connection.
Yep, and then on the remote, there's something that says source, then just press the source
We're
button.
gonna give you a handout.
I can help us think. Thank you. Oh, I gave it back. Yeah, to somebody, but I didn't have.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sure, nice to talk to you.
You guys weren't hungry enough to ask me a question.
We need one more. I forgot this one. Yes.